This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, grain shippers grow concerned about water levels in the nation's inland waterways. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, but we will be joined by Max Armstrong here in a little bit. Before we do, however, it's deja vu for growers up and down the river system in the nation's midsection. Water levels are low, lower than they were heading into harvest of last year. That's driving some changes in the economics for river shippers. Joining us now to talk about it is Mike Steenhoek, the Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. And Mike, thanks for joining us this week.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
If you would, kind of set us up with how river levels look in September of this year compared to just 1 year ago, September of 2022.
Well, it's a movie sequel none of us want to watch. When you look at water levels this year compared to the same period last year in places like St. Louis, we're about 4 feet lower on this date than we were the same date last year. Memphis, about 4.5 feet lower. And again, last year we experienced historically low water levels, so it's clearly a cause for concern when we're actually lower at this point. And this is the time where we're increasingly into harvest season, which is game time when it comes to agriculture. It's really critical to have our supply chain operating at full throttle, and unfortunately that is not occurring. So it clearly is a cause for concern.
It certainly is. And Mike, you mentioned last year, the entire last winter, we saw the Army Corps of Engineers dealing with that record or historic low water level. Did they make some long-range improvements that have improved transportation for this year's low water level?
Well, we are seeing some real good evidence that, the Corps of Engineers, one of their resolutions from last year, even though they worked very diligently on dredging throughout the inland waterway system, particularly the Mississippi River, was better to get on the front end of it if such an event ever occurs again. The best time to respond to a challenge is actually before the challenge rather than after the challenge. And so we are seeing some really good dredging activity by the Corps of Engineers. Obviously, the solution to this problem is precipitation. The cause of it is lack of precipitation. But there are things you can do, and dredging is a good example of that, to maybe take the edge off it a little bit. And so we're fortunately seeing that, and we commend the Corps for their activity.
Glad to hear some progress is being made there, Mike. But in the meantime, I understand we are seeing some restrictions put on loading in these barges. Is that something is pretty common up and down the system?
Yeah, when you have low water conditions like this, and we experienced it last year, the river doesn't normally behave this way. What we have seen it these last couple of years is it impacts barge transportation in two ways: channel depth and channel width. And with a lower water levels on the river, you can't put as much freight, in our case soybeans and grain, in each barge because you're concerned that it'll actually scrape the bottom and maybe experience a grounding. So that's channel depth, but then also channel width. With less water, the shoreline becomes more evident. The shipping channel narrows. So it's kind of like going from a 6-lane highway down to 3 lanes or 2 lanes. And so you can't put as many barges together and attach them to form one single unit. So when you put those two things together, lack of channel depth, lack of channel width, it really does impede the economics of barge transportation.
And those economics are changing, Mike. I understand with these restrictions, higher prices are coming as well. Can you give us an indication as to what you've seen so far?
Yeah, we track, the cost of loading a barge at various spots throughout the river. The U.S. Department of Agriculture does a good job posting those rates. In St. Louis, for a ton being loaded at that area, we're 77% higher than the 3-year average. If you're loading a ton of freight in the Memphis area, 91% higher than the 3-year average. And one of the unfortunate things about agriculture is when you've got a cost escalator in transportation, those costs are disproportionately passed on to the farmer in the form of a lower price that farmer receives at point of sale, or their basis gets more wide or negative. So farmers are the ones that pay the cost of that, unfortunately.
They certainly are. Hopefully those farmers throughout the Corn Belt will start to see some moisture even as they work to get harvest in, and we can keep that river level rising. It's Mike Steenhoek, the Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing. And Chris, you work with growers across the country. Any harvest progress to report as of yet?
Guys are actually getting going. We'll see. The nice thing about social media, the double-edged sword, we'll start hearing about it sooner or later. There's a big argument out there amongst guys that this late heat, really hurt yields. The USDA did not deliver on that last report with a big yield drop. And we'll have to see. And that's going to be that 10%. 10% is a lot on a 15 billion bushel crop. So we'll see. And, we're going to have to wait and find out. Hopefully for farmers, especially if you're unhedged or didn't sell anything north of $6, you're going to want to hope that the yields are lower and that we actually had a drop in yield, because that's the one thing that can help us recover as we sit on these 2-year lows.
We're on 2-year lows. The market isn't expecting a bigger crop, apparently, watching these futures markets, Chris, but we're also seeing ethanol production come down. With this rise in oil prices, I would have assumed we'd see more crush for ethanol, but it's not happening yet, is it? It's
kind of a lagging indicator. I think the one thing that guys forget is the ethanol plants, they operate on margin. And if the margins they're there. The latest data we got was kind of surprising that it was lower, but you've seen a little bit of a drop off in demand for gasoline in general. So I think that's kind of all related. At the end of the day, I think if we stay north of $90 a barrel, that's going to be supportive. I wrote in the letter the other day that I think that if we weren't at 90, if we were back at 60, because in May we were at $64. People forget that we were at an 18-month low. If we were sub 60, I think you'd see corn, under 450, sadly, because it's such a direct, it's an easy way for people to say, oh my goodness, we need to hedge crude oil.
Chris, with this crude oil rally, and as you mentioned, we've seen $30 move here in the price of crude in the past 4 months. Should producers be hedging for that as we look forward into 2024?
As far as your inputs go, we had a long time to get, diesel oil was at 18-month lows. We had a pretty good window to hedge. So, barring, having a time machine and going back and do something, I think now it's kind of like you play defense. How do you play defense? Well, lock in what you need. If you're worried about crude oil going north about $100 and staying there, then the only way that you can do that is to either have call options on something where they're cheap now, but if the market does blow up, the gain in those options will help you pay for the fuel that you're going to need. But I would look back and say everybody knew that there was a pretty good chance there to do some hedging when the prices were cheap. And we're heading into the winter. We'll see what happens with natural gas. Natural gas was sitting on its lows. So we'll see. I think a lot of this depends on what happens with the whole rest of the world economy too. But at the end of the day, if I'm a producer, even at these levels, I think it makes sense to do some hedging or go ahead and buy forward some physical product.
Makes sense. Chris, let's turn to the wheat market real quick. We've seen that market lose nearly $2 here in the past 3 months. Is the downside slide almost done in Chicago wheat?
We'll have to wait and see. The wheat was the most disappointing market. We had all kind of fundamental news out there. Every weekend we went home, we were worried what's going to happen in Ukraine, what's going to happen. Every rally was one to sell. It was something I think that we'll be talking about probably 5-10 years from now, probably in ag econ classes. Why didn't wheat do this? We were all promised 2.5 years ago, we were promised by the UN that we only had 6 weeks left worth of wheat. Well, at the end of the day, price discovery is price discovery. And the odd thing is that when we did get these dollar rallies, and we had chances, if you didn't reward them, if you didn't hedge them then, they dropped so quickly. Just back, 6.5 weeks ago, we were $2 higher. And that, I think, was that last little blip in May, July, caught a lot of people off. People like, okay, this is it, we're going. But producers, if you look at the big picture historically, what you don't want to do is lose another $1 or $1.50. So things are not good. We're at 2-year lows, just like corn. This is the time where I don't think you want to get aggressive making cash sales. I think that you want to be hedged and kind of wait and see, especially if you're going to put stuff in the bin. Keep a cheap put under it.
All right. We'll have more to come with Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're back talking markets with Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing. Chris, we talked corn and wheat. Want to get your thoughts here on the soybean market. Again, still holding up following that USDA report, but some weakness apparent. Where do you see beans going from here?
Beans have got the only good positive bullish fundamental story, right? We've got tighter than needed supplies. I think the big surprise too was the added acres of corn. Well, those acres at least didn't go to soybeans. So the setup is there, I think, for continuing to have decent demand. The Chinese have not been aggressive buyers, but they've been steady, right? It's nothing to write home about. We've kind of met our goals there, not so much for corn and wheat. People keep saying that at some point, the Chinese just did a huge amount of stimulus in their economy to try to save their real estate. Yeah. So that money may eventually find its way here, especially it depends on what happens with the South American crop. And at the end of the day, soybeans were the best performing row crop this year, right? And we had a $3 range. You could have sold it at $11.30 or $14.35. A lot of people like to say, well, what's a good cash sale? What's a bad cash sale? Anything north of $13.30 puts you in the upper 1/3 of prices. Okay. We were just there. Now we're dancing around $13 today. We've had a slide here. That's the thing with soybeans. We talked earlier, when we get these rallies, you've got to be willing to reward them somehow, either with a cash sale or a hedge. Now we have to see if $13 hold. That's going to be the biggie. We did go as low as like $12.80. We may go back down there and retest that $12.80 level. But right now, this $13 level is big. $13 attracts a lot of attention. A round number. It's a 100-day moving average right down there. So hopefully, this correction's behind us. Now we're heading into harvest, and where the rubber meets the road. Maybe this is an opportunity. So I've advised everybody that if you did have $14 hedges on or something, roll them down, cover them. If you sold stuff here, if you're an end user, you want to buy on dollar dips. You don't want to sell on dollar dips. So the calls are cheap right now. Why? Because 3-4 months from now, if the yields aren't there, those cheap calls right now, those can help you. So you want to buy stuff when nobody wants it. That's when I want my clients looking at it.
Well, something that everybody wants right now, Chris, is cattle. We continue to see both that live cattle and that feeder cattle market rally. Live cattle getting close to $200 a hundredweight. Yeah. Where does this cattle market go? Can it stay up here for the remainder of the fall?
It's supply and demand. The herd's too small. Every cattle on feed we've gotten in the last year and a half, doesn't matter what it was, it's a little bit of a blip. We haven't had a correction, a pullback, really since May. So yeah, we're overdue. The one thing about cattle market, I'll say, and I'll just leave it at this, there's ways to hedge. Yeah. Some guys hedge with futures, some guys hedge with options. The last year and a half has been a real primer on why you want to use options, because we've rallied $40, $50 in a year and a half. Anybody that, I don't care where you were, I don't care if you were, had a psychic friend network, anybody that was short futures, you left a lot of money on the table. If you had options, yeah, you paid for the put, you lost the value of the put, but literally this was a year and a half where everybody was said, I probably would have been better off, because if you're farming, you can't be raising animals without a floor, right? Because you can't have you can't wake up one day and have the market fall out of you. Yeah. So it's been a great learning experience for anybody. This is when you want to use puts. At the end of the day, people have lost a ton of money trying to call the tops in cattle. Mm-hmm. I would just say, like everybody else, the trend is your friend. Sit back and wait. Sooner or later, we're going to have a correction. And again, like they always say, nobody gets a text message the day before. You kind of just have to bite the bullet and say, all right, I want to protect this revenue level. And I think that's the way you approach it. Protect the revenue and hope it keeps going higher.
That's the way to do it. Chris Robinson, Robinson Ag Marketing, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, sir.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Last week, tech expert Chad Colby showed us some new hardware from Apple. This week, he's got the software update for us.
If you haven't heard, Apple has rolled out iOS 17, the next generation of software for their tablets, for their watches, their iPods, and check this out, their smartphones. Now, the majority, about 80% of the ag industry uses Apple smartphones, and this update goes back several years. I think it goes back to even SE and XR phones and up. So 11, 12, 13, 14, and of course the new 15 that debuted this weekend. So there's so many enhancements to this. It's going to be pretty hard in my tech segment to give you all the details. So go to YouTube. There's tons of new videos that have been released to show you some of these features, but I had to hit some of the high points. Number one, check out this cool new standby mode. You can park your phone, whether that's in your vehicle, charging, or maybe alongside your bed at night, if that's what you do with your phone or at your desk. You can use these widgets here, a calendar, clock, all kinds of things. That's kind of clever. They also added for the first time offline maps. So if you're going somewhere with limited connectivity, you can download those maps before you go there. There's a lot of things around connectivity and communications. You can send FaceTime voicemails now, which are pretty cool. They've also got this neat feature. You can take two phones with iOS 17, bump them together, share the contacts, or share any data, which is really, really neat. And you know those two-step verification codes you get with your bank or other apps you use via text? Now the phone has the ability, if you get those messages via emails, it'll auto-populate those as well, which is great. They also added live transcripting. Check this out. If you're taking a voicemail, so somebody calls you and you can't take the call, and it will transcribe in real time what the person is leaving you in that voicemail. So if it's an urgent call, actually my wife Jacqueline and I tried it out. It's pretty neat. You can jump right in and take the call. It's pretty cool. There's so many features, but I do want to caution everyone, if you're in a tractor cab this fall or in a combine, especially using an iPad, make sure you check with your software provider that they're all set to go on 17, because you may want to stay on 16 until you get the green light from the provider. I'll tell you what, this is a huge upgrade if you're an Apple user, and there's a lot of great features. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Well, thank you, Chad, for that update. And folks, if you're looking for more technology insight, stay with us. Later on in the program, we'll explore how an Arizona alfalfa farm is using technology from John Deere.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
It was beautiful weather in Grand Island, Nebraska this year for the Husker Harvest Days show, and Max had a chance to go. While he was there, he caught up with Michael Newland, the executive director of the Propane Education Research Council, to talk about the usage of that fuel on farms for more than just drying grain.
This is a very unique show for us in the fact that it's very much revolves around irrigation in the whole irrigation market. So it's a big show for us for that regard. We've got an irrigation engine running over my shoulder, showing folks what we can do with propane, and that's really what we're promoting all week here at Husker Harvest Days.
Give me your sales pitch, Mike. Why is propane better?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that make it unique and better in our regard. So no fuel quality issues. If you happen to get a lot of rain that year, you don't have to worry about it sitting out in the field in that tank all year. The fuel's going to be ready to use when you're ready to use it. The emissions are a big one. Gosh, our fuel's cleanest combustion fuel on the planet. We tout that all the time. And then cost. The price of electricity continues to rise. The price of diesel's up. Gasoline is up. Our fuel is very stable in that regard. So all three of those things, I think, make it a very attractive case.
You know, folks out on the front line are the local dealers, no doubt. The grower interacts with those people that really keep the supplies coming.
Absolutely. We think we're very unique in that respect. We're the one energy that is a face-to-face business with our end user. Everything else comes across the transmission line or through a pipe, and people just write a check and pay the bill. And we've got relationships at the farm gate and with every consumer that uses our fuel. We think that's a really benefit for our fuel.
For that producer who's watching that bottom line closely and wanting to book supplies as economically as possible, do you have any guidance?
Well, we always ask them to make sure they're communicating with their local supplier. That's the key. But also make sure you're booking and having those conversations at a point in time when there's not stress. You know, we have those during the summer when there's not stress of cold weather, grain drying going on around you. We think that's the best time for all those conversations to happen locally.
Don't wait till the last moment.
Exactly correct. Please don't call going down the road in the combine to that first field trying to get the first delivery for that grain dryer.
For folks in the pork and poultry business, you play an important role there too, don't you?
Absolutely. I tell everybody that if you're eating a chicken, a turkey, or a pig, you're probably consuming our fuel in a way. We do heat most of those animals earlier in their lives, so we play a big role in that regard. If anybody's looking to try propane in a new application around the farm, I'd encourage them to go to propane.com/farm incentive. Our industry and our organization does offer incentives for folks who want to try new equipment. We offer in various categories at various levels, but can earn up to $5,000 incentive from the Propane Education and Research Council. And again, all that's at propane.com/farm incentive.
Well, that was Mike Newland, the head of the Propane Education Research Council. And if you want to learn about putting propane to work on your farm, visit propane.com/farm incentive. While Max was at Husker Harvest Days, he also had the chance to make it over to that bright red equipment, as you know he loves to do. And he caught up with Mark Burns from Case IH about a new paint scheme they've got this year on their Patriot sprayer.
We decided for model year 24 to add a little splash to our show display and put a patriotic flag wrap onto the Patriot here.
What about the machine itself? It's still providing a lot of great utility for the farmer. Yeah, that sprayer has become such an important component of the farm.
That's right, and we kind of jokingly have some arguments inside of Case IH about which is the most important piece on the farm, and actually they're all important. But when it comes to actually maintaining and holding yield, really that crop protection and fertility is so important.
That season covers a number of weeks now, a surprising segment of the growing season.
That's right. Back when I started going on about 30 years ago, a sprayer was a pretty small season of use, but now anywhere from pre-plant all the way to post-harvest, so you're getting a great deal of use out of that investment.
The amount of time in that cabin means the ride is important. Share with us the attributes of the Patriot.
So legacy Patriots were known for their trailing link suspension, and with the introduction of the Patriot 50 series, we took a clean sheet approach and went with a 4-bar linkage, really driving for productivity as well as the superior operator ride quality that we were looking for, and that's where that 4-bar linkage coupled with an airbag really provides that for the operator. More hours in the cab, but they're feeling refreshed when they get out.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? Well, let's take a look at the precision application here. What are you bringing to the field to really make that unit so precise?
So a couple of things when it comes to precision. The first one would be in the field computer or rate control and guidance perspective. So with the model year 24s, we have every machine comes with an AFS Pro 1200. So from vehicle control, product control, as well as guidance all through one display. For those that are looking for something that's a little more information displayed, is we can actually offer 2 displays in the cab now. So you can elect for 2 AFS Pro 1200s or a Pro 1200 coupled with a Viper 4. And with each one of those, we have some guidance selections that really help provide that precision and accuracy.
I suppose getting into the harvest season and shortly thereafter, it's a good time to be thinking about the application season in 2024.
That's right. You've got to be, especially with the strength of the industry and whatnot now, making those decisions early is really going to help as far as getting an order placed and getting that machine produced when you're going to want it delivered.
That was Mark Burns from Case IH talking about that patriotic Case Patriot sprayer. Folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness coming, including a trip to North Carolina where Max is going to learn more about how BASF prepares their seeds and trait technologies. And at the end of the show, we're going to take a trip to Arizona to explore how a hay farm utilizes new technology.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. It might be planting time for a lot of growers across the country, but for the innovators developing that next generation of seed, it's always time to look ahead to planting season. And recently, Max had the chance to do that with Doug Little, the head of seed and traits with BASF. They talked about what's coming from that company and where they see this technology going.
Talk about your soybean seed offering here at BASF. What does the portfolio look like?
So it's an outstanding portfolio, and really it starts with our product deployment team. They are the ones that have complete control of our soybean portfolio construct, and then they're able to look at the products that the vendor sends us, and then really look at the ones that are worthy to be put into a Xatavo soybean seed bag.
Talk to me about Xatavo.
It's a 3-year-old brand. It's a brand that we distribute from MS Technologies. But what's unique about it is the ability that we get to pick the varieties we want that works and services our soybean customers. And that allows us to really look at the strict requirements we have for high quality seed.
Yield trials, field trials, they're vital. Growers really look at them. They examine them. They make a lot of decisions based on those trials. What have you seen with Xatavo?
So some outstanding results from 2022. So the Winfield United answer plots, we had 7 regional winners. We had 20 out of 10 first. So all of that has done very well. And in addition to our first trial, so the farmer's trial test that's out there, the independent trial test, we had 11 reach #1 status and 155 out of the top 10 finishes.
What have growers been telling you? What kind of feedback have you had from producers?
Producers have been very satisfied. So we've had some great results. We've got some studies from Stratus that show that when producers use our seed, they're very satisfied of the performance, the quality. They look in the bag and they see high quality seed. And then at the end, they're seeing a total solution opportunity they get from BASF.
Anything else planned for Xatavo in the future?
So in 2025, BASF developed germplasm will be released inside of the Xatavo bag, and that's going to be very unique germplasm that will be not available for growers anywhere else other than the Xatavo soybean seed. Why that's important to growers, though, is they offer diversity. Many of our seed brands today, again, come from 6 breeding companies, and we're one of 6 of them. And then there's only 4 seed trait developers. So you think about today, there's about 161 seed brands. 6 of the companies are really developed in germplasm. We'll be one of those, releasing our new BASF developed germplasm in 2025.
So across your portfolio, you're really bringing a lot of answers to the growers then.
Yeah, certainly choices they have, and then you think about our total solution with our soybean herbicide program being #1 market share, couple that with now Xatavo being the whole foundational component of a soybean acre, and you bring the total package to the grower, and we see a real opportunity for growers to maximize their yield potential and their profit opportunity.
That's an exciting story. Thank you for sharing it with us, Doug. We appreciate it.
That was Doug Little, the head of seed and traits at BASF. And folks, if you want to see the entire Plan Smart, Grow Smart series, all of those interviews are collected on the website. You can visit it at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
And it's time to take a look at the weather. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, looking out at the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, might get active this next week.
Yeah, we roll the astronomical calendar into the fall season, and here we go off to the races with a moderate to strong El Nino and the trademark of that typically across the west and northwestern reaches of the country. You get into a fairly active weather pattern right from the get-go, and here we go with a pretty substantial trough across Northern California, Pacific Northwest, just beginning to move inland early parts of the week. Yeah, with some cold air up aloft, a couple stronger storms can't be ruled out, but as you get along the divide on eastward, some late summer warmth continues on, a couple of showers across sections of the Dakotas. That is it. But as the week wears on, you'll see that trough strengthen and carve out a pretty substantial weather system here into the northwestern reaches of the country. On the warmer side, a couple of active and severe thunderstorm clusters. On the cooler side, some organized rains. It's really haves versus haves not, with dryness and drought across Montana, but significant moisture. You get the divide country and westward to be lowering snow levels down around 5 to maybe 7,000 feet. So the season's first significant storm out there, and rain as well across coastal sections that'll be moving inland. So some relatively good news considering dryness and drought so far this summertime and early autumn season. The southern and eastern flank of that trough begins to maybe generate a couple of showers from Napa on northward early in the week. Otherwise, pretty typical setup, quiet setup over the southwestern reaches reaches of the country. Seasonal temperatures, humidity continues to climb. And boy, that south end of winter wheat, especially across Texas and Oklahoma, despite a scattering of showers and thunderstorms last week, in a world of hurt. But looky here as the week wears on. Frontal boundary, upper air trough, moisture across northern and central California. A few rain showers there, and we'll tap into a little bit of leftover monsoon moisture, high base, scattered thunderstorm activity over the southwestern reaches of the country as the week wears on, especially western Kansas on northward and through the Nebraska area. Showers and thunderstorms will be on the increase. So hopefully in pockets, Mike, some drought relief for the central and southern plains as the week wears on.
Well, as you mentioned, in the plains, those combines are moving north as harvest ticks along. Greg, what's this next week outlook for them?
And those newly sown winter wheat fields, too, need moisture, too. Yeah, that's tough to do when you've got the degree of dryness and drought going on, but some optimism as the week wears on. And you'll get back at it as well if you've been into trying to get the back 40 dried out or harvested. We've got still this renegade weather system. Yeah, it's a juggling act. You've got harvest, you've got a drought. We got to get something going here, and we'll have the leftover vestiges early in the week of some shower activity over the eastern Corn Belt. But note the jet stream well to the north and back to the west, so it's warmer, drier weather into the western complex and parts of the plains, even some 90-degree heat as we had last week over parts of the western Corn Belt, central and southern plains. Some of that could work northward, and we're back into dry mode here for outdoor work, early harvest, and or watching the back 40 mature. Showers and thunderstorms and some drought relief across the upper Red River Valley of the north, back into the central plains, and a shift to some organized rainfall as the week wears on across the western Dakotas into Big Sky country. Again, pretty quiet weather picture over the central and south end of winter wheat. It is a world of hurt through the pasture lands and rangelands of Texas into Louisiana. Topsoil moisture just virtually gone. Some recharge early in the week with a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms with this weather system. Note the troughiness over the western and southwestern reaches of the country. That'll push a cold front into the high plains areas. Some scattered but locally severe storms despite it being fall. So we'll watch for some rough weather there. Hot, humid weather over the southern plains. The hot ridge is still there. Back to dry time across the Gulf Coast areas as well. Mike, it is just a world of hurt in Texas or Louisiana. You go farther east into Tennessee and Florida, moisture reserves are in great shape there.
Well, Greg, I understand drought is intensifying in the eastern Corn Belt, Indiana, Ohio, and eastward. What does that look like next week?
Well, we did get some rainfall in some spots close to or a little above an inch into parts of Illinois last week, as well as southern Wisconsin and back into Iowa. Yeah, you need the moisture, but you want to get harvest going. It's the ultimate trade-off here. But we think warmer to milder and drier, like we talked about last week on the extended outlook for the fall season. Leftover windy weather system across the northeast of New England. Dry weather for the far eastern Corn Belt. Again, some shower activity in the Mississippi Valley. Very much scattered as the week wears on. That system drops off to the south and east, back into high pressure sinking air. Temperatures at or above average with low afternoon humidity, good moisture reduction, and dry down values. The only significant moisture late in the week out through the Missouri Valley, the upper Midwest. A couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms anticipated. Over the southeastern part of the country, again, soils and pasture lands looking great from Tennessee into Florida. Here's the leftover windy weather system and squally system that did just that over the past weekend and part of last week over the coastal sections of the southeastern states. Here's at least a scattering of a couple of showers and thunderstorms down through the Delta region early on into the week. As the week wears on over the southeastern portions of the country, well, there's more hot and humid weather with the hot ridge building its way back into Texas, the Delta region. Seasonal high pressure continues on across the Tennessee Valley. Got some wet weather still down through Florida. And again, the recharge process continues on there with additional showers and thunderstorms into the forecast. So the tropics, by the way, continue to be quiet for now across the Gulf Coast areas and in through the Atlantic Basin as well, back across the Pacific. Weather remains in fairly good order across that part of the world.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We're talking weather with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, we talked river levels with Mike Steenhoek earlier in the program. Any hope next week we could see some rain?
Not really. We had some last week, but it pales in comparison to the degree of low levels that we have. Remember, a year ago, same situation. You can blame the dryness and drought weather pattern remaining firmly ensconced and impacting the river systems probably well through the fall season as we see it now. As the week wears on, more wet weather. Midwest week over the Gulf Coast and southeastern states. Good news here with moisture in great shape. We need additional here into Texas and the Gulf Coast. Might be a little optimistic. Dry time for much of the upper Midwest. Early in the week, shower activity out of the eastern Corn Belt into the northeast of New England. Look at the moisture pattern through California, the Pacific Northwest, along the divide into the high plains. Some spots a half to an inch, some spots 2 or 3. Mike, it's a significant weather system, the first of the season out across the Northwest.
Well, Greg, as you look ahead to the first full week in October, any chance of fall temperatures?
Not really. The hot ridge is still there. It continues from time to time building on northward. A little piece here, another one through the Gulf Coast area. So, yeah, enjoy the warmth and the ability to get the back 40 towards maturity. The trough and the cool weather across the western reaches of the country where there's good news with additional drought relief for the plains all the way to the Pacific Coast. Normal precip, the heart of the Corn Belt, back to drier than average weather from the Ohio Valley on eastward. Opportunities for harvest will continue on.
Does it cool off the week of October 9th?
Into the far northern tier of states, the northeast into New England, a little westward retrogression of the warm summery ridge. I don't care if it's October, going to feel like almost August in some areas, all the way down through Florida and the western states as well. From a precip standpoint, it continues active in the northwest. Good news with drought across the southern plains, moisture there, a little tropical system for the Gulf Coast, active weather pattern for the upper Midwest and the northeast.
What do you see the week of October 16th through the 22nd?
From a temperature standpoint, no real cold air in sight except for the west, just a few degrees below average. Southeastern part of the country, still a piece of that warm ridge is still in position, but note that southwest to northeast jet stream pattern active from California across the western through northern Corn Belt.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Well, I will tell you, I'm on a mission. I'm looking for any tractor dealership from back in the day that was owned by an Armstrong. I know there was one in Iowa, there was one in Indiana, and just the other day I learned that there was one in Ohio. Max's Tractor Shed is being brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. Well, Max Armstrong is in search of a dealership, and it doesn't matter, any brand that was owned by an Armstrong back in the day. I got to talking about it when I was looking at this beautiful 1206 from Ohio. While visiting at the Big Rand Tool Show, I came across this tractor made in 1965, but even better, I learned that the owner had restored it in tribute to his grandfather, who had been an IH dealer all of those years ago, a cigar-chewing farm equipment dealer at Payne, Ohio, named Ted Armstrong. Well, Ted had a brother who was also an IH dealer over in Indiana, Frank Armstrong. Oh, but my tractor shed story this week gets better. Maybe you haven't heard from me as I shared this before. In Iowa, 70 years ago, there was an IH dealer named Max Armstrong. So a big thank you to Brian Young for showing this mighty fine IH 1206 of the half century of progress, but also helping care for a part of the Armstrong farm equipment heritage, and specifically that of his grandpa, Ted Armstrong, at Payne, Ohio. Mark Stock brings a good name to the auction business, too. He shares with us now what's crossing the block at Big Iron.
Max, one of the largest auctions conducted on BigIron.com will be this week. 3,700 plus items will sell on Wednesday, September the 27th. 299 different sellers from all over the U.S. will be representing quality farm equipment, construction equipment, and transportation items. Grindstone Utility Constructions out of Jamesport, Missouri is one of the featured sellers. High Country Ranches LLC out of Wyoming is a featured seller. And Eureka Inc. out of Columbia Falls, Montana will sell excavators and construction-related items. On Thursday, the Steve Rooney Retirement Sale in Kinderhook, Illinois will take place, selling a John Deere S670 combine, a John Deere 6130D mechanical front tractor with a loader. There's a John Deere 9630 four-wheel drive tractor, a John Deere 8320R mechanical front tractor, and many more quality items. Also selling on Thursday, September the 28th, Taylor Implement, their huge sale featuring 118 items. Equipment located in Yuma, Colorado, and in Hoxie, Kansas. Late model Kloss forage harvesters and combines. There's a 2021 Kloss 16-30 16 row 30 corn head selling. Several Orbis 750 and 900 series forage heads. Huge selection of late model equipment will sell for Taylor equipment. Please watch the Big Iron website for all the latest auction information.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. We're meeting that next generation of agricultural leadership, and this week it's Taylor Moffitt. She serves as the president of the Arkansas State FFA. And Taylor, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit, if you would, about the Arkansas FFA. How many members do you have in the state?
We have close to 16,000 members as of this year, and we are really excited for our growing chapters and growing state organization.
That is fantastic, Taylor. Now tell me, what was it that made you want to be a part of FFA?
So I started pretty young. I started showing market hogs pretty much as soon as I could, and I really fell in love with just the community atmosphere with fellow agriculturalists and showmen. I knew the second that I was in 9th grade that I wanted to join FFA and really get into that and become involved. I actually took up an officer position that year and kind of went all in just as soon as I could.
What was it about leadership at FFA that really spoke to you?
I believe that the best leaders are first servants, and I was able to witness that firsthand with fellow leaders within my chapter and how they were willing to put others first, put others before them. And I really wanted to lead in that way. I wanted to help my chapter to grow, and I wanted to help others reach their full potential and really enjoy agriculture and FFA the same way that I had. So when I started being a leader, my purpose was to encourage others and also to follow my true purpose of sharing God's love with others and just really being a light to those around me. So leadership in FFA kind of just fell into place, and it was felt natural to me to take charge and to just really fall in love with agriculture and all the opportunities it offers for others.
Well, that's fantastic. And take charge you have, Taylor. This time of year, harvest is coming in. What's the officer team up to around Arkansas?
So the officer team has many different responsibilities. We're kind of spread out all over the state right now. We've gotten our feet wet a little bit with college, and we're working into those environments and those routines. We'll begin chapter visits pretty soon, so meeting with our members, getting to know them. And right now we're also preparing for a national convention where we will be voting delegates and leadership delegates at the national convention.
National Convention not that far away, folks. We've been talking with Taylor Moffitt, the president of the Arkansas State FFA. The John Deere Operations Center has become a valuable tool for growers across the country and in a number of different crops. Recently, our friend Willie Vogt had the chance to travel down to Arizona to take a look at a hay farmer who's utilizing the operation system to help manage his operation more efficiently. Willie takes us there now.
This time out for Tech at Work, we traveled to West Maricopa County, Arizona, to the William Perry operation, where he talked about managing precision agriculture for a crop we don't always associate with that kind of data, alfalfa, and he discusses how that works for his operation.
I've specifically been using Ops Center for alfalfa for probably the last 8 to 10 years, mostly just as location, fuel usage, but in the last couple of years, along with our precision ag team, we've started to really hone in on exactly what our costs are per acre. Using Ops Center on fuel burn, DEF, we're able to use even bring in depreciation and service costs, because most of our service goes to our John Deere dealership. But on top of that, we're actually in the midst of, just in the last 2 years, we've started to actually be able to begin to accumulate yield data with some new technology that Deere's coming out with, which is really started to broaden what we can do with the technology. Once we have the yield map, we can now start bringing in other processes that we've been able to do in our row crops, like variable rate seeding, variable rate fertilizer and pesticide applications that we haven't been able to do in the past because we haven't had the data.
Curtis Pollock works with Stoats Equipment in the precision ag area, and he works closely with William Perry. He explains how yield management and yield monitoring in alfalfa put more money in the pockets of the farmers he works with.
So being able to do yield off of it, so there's a couple different ways. One is being able to have a usable yield map on a field-to-field basis. And the nice thing about alfalfa is they're getting, roughly 8 to 12 cuttings a year, so we can actually do in-season application and actually make a difference instead of doing it season by season. Kind of have little micro seasons based off the cuttings. The other way we do it is Bill Perry gets a report daily for the amount of bales that he produced the day before. So we have technology on the balers that it sends that file to the operations center. We're able to pull a file off of that and send it in a report to say, hey, you did 120 bales in field A, you're able to do 200 bales in field B and 47 bales in field C for such and such date. He gets that daily, and that's another way to know your yield is roughly off your bale count, because most of the customers, the growers in Western Arizona, they go based off of tonnage and bales. And so yield is good to be able to make in-season decisions, but at the end of the day, you want to know how many bales you've produced, how many tons you've produced.
Capturing more information about different crops in agriculture is becoming more important. William Perry has found that knowing exactly what he's making for every bale is paying off for his business. Reporting for This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Willie Vogt.
Thank you, Willie. And folks, Willie will have another update for us on that Tech at Work segment. He'll head to yet another geography to see how farmers are utilizing the Operations Center. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If harvest is underway in your neck of the woods next week, folks, be safe. We wish you the best of luck, and we hope you'll join us next weekend right here for more This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.